video is made possible by Brilliant. I saw the movie Beetlejuice 9 times in the theater. I had the soundtrack on cassette, which I would listen to incessantly until it broke. Even though the film is part of the horror genre, it's not exactly scary, as much as it plays on the tropes from other horror films that were popular at the time, like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street. He draws a door on the wall, and it actually becomes a door. Well, yeah, it's scary, it's also completely architectural. Imagine a door, draw it, and it becomes real, if it were only that easy. There are so many architectural themes packed into Beetlejuice. It must have had some effect on my interest in architecture. The more that I learn, the more that the movie looks like a deliberate commentary about buildings. I've even screened it at school for architecture students to experience and analyze. The opening sequence uses a full model of the town, which you can't distinguish from the real one. That is, until we see the spider. And you can inhabit the model. Adam Maitland, played by a young Alec Baldwin, wearing an outfit similar to the one that I'm wearing now, digs for Beetlejuice in the model grave that Adam built when he was full-sized, but doesn't remember crafting. But he and his wife, played by Gina Davis, goes about unbuilding it by digging with a real, scaled-down shovel through layers of misscaled cardboard and foam. Architects are always dealing with scale in drawings and in models. And then there's that iconic house. Holy crap. It begins life as an unself-conscious, authentic home, and then over the course of the film, it becomes only a parody of a house, a postmodern marvel that presents the image of hominess, all the while losing all of its authentic attributes in favor of flat and lifeless symbols. But when you think about it, the entire genre of horror is inherently architectural. Beetlejuice is like a mirror to the genre. I mean, it's almost always a house that's haunted. The standard unit of haunting is a building, and specifically a house. For some reason, ghosts that can just walk through walls just get tied to or fixated on or even become a house. In this video, I want to look closely at the architecture of horror, from houses in horror movies to haunted house attractions, in order to see just how they achieve their effects by using architecture. Houses really seem to be the preferred setting for horror to play out, from the Psycho house to being trapped and tied to a bed in Misery, to Poltergeist, to Hereditary. The house is often a major setting and a character in horror films. French philosopher Gaston Bachelard writes in The Poetic of Space, "If one would ask what is the most precious benefaction of the house, we would say the house accommodates dreaming. The house protects the dreamer. The house allows us to dream in peace. And the disruption of that peace, or when the dream and the reality become frighteningly indistinguishable, that's the stuff of horror." Houses are the most intimate and personal of building types. Their interiors are safe, sacred, and familiar. Because we know them so well, any small disruption of norms will pique our recognition that something's wrong. Sigmund Freud calls this the unhomely. The root of the term home in unhomely is a translation from the German, which in the original is used more to mean average, everyday, or familiar. So lots of things can actually be unhomely, even humans. It's not necessarily referring to the building type. But the word choice is telling, because sometimes the home and self collapse so that the houses in horror can have human-like qualities or characteristics. Sometimes they have facial-like features, like in the Amityville horror house. Or they might become animated directly, like in Beetlejuice when he becomes part of the banister. This collapse of the building becoming like a living being preys on some very deep-seated fears. From the story of Crimson Peak, a house as old as this one becomes in time a living thing. It starts holding on to things. This even happens in Home Alone, when the furnace becomes a menacing face. The Haunting of Hill House also imbues the house itself with its own motivations and will. Inanimate objects coming to life. This is one of the quintessential forms of the unhomely for Freud. This also includes thoughts appearing to have an effect on the real world, seeing your double like a doppelganger effect, and representations of death such as ghosts or spirits. The unhomely arises when childhood beliefs that we've grown out of suddenly seem real. Freud called it the return of the repressed. In the film Night House, Owen builds a house as an extension of himself, and then he uses it to haunt his wife. The house changes and shifts over the course of the movie, even becoming a mirror image of the original, where she seems to encounter herself. In one scene, the molding silhouette is the shape of the husband, and then it quickly snaps into something else. This reminds me of drawings from 18th century French architects and theorists as they were attempting to understand how buildings had character. They drew various molding profiles extruded from different faces that are associated with different personality types. It was considered that perhaps the building would have the personality or character of those portrayed in the decoration. Eleanor shook herself, turning to see the room complete. It had an unbelievably faulty design, which left it chillingly wrong in all its dimensions, so that the walls seemed always in one direction a fraction longer than the eye could endure, and in another direction a fraction less than the barest possible tolerable length. Empty houses are also scary because they seem devoid of life. It's the same way that dolls are creepy. They're like zombies or bodies without brains. And this is due to the substitution that houses are like people's surrogates. They represent their inhabitants. The character of the people inside get projected onto the building and vice versa. Edward Scissorhands masterfully portrays houses that represent its characters. The colorfully cheerful, yet oddly blank and monotonous suburbs is offset with the ruinous, dark-colored castle. The castle embodies the history and life it's led over time, wearing its scars on its surface, just like Edward Scissorhands does. They are the imperfections that result from dealing with being different and having gone through a difficult life as an outsider. The suburb, in contrast, is textureless. The fresh coats of paint and manicured lawns hide any and all imperfections behind a superficial veneer. These homes are deeply uncanny, a little too repeatable and lifeless. Doppelgangers and representation abound until Edward Scissorhands unlocks their creativity. In case you're interested, this was filmed in a real place, Lutz, Florida. In fact, this collapse of representation and reality, the house and what it stands for, I think is at the heart of many of the effects deployed in horror to engage us in the psychology of fear. Living inside a representation, like a drawing or a model, shakes up what is possible. Ordinary things become extraordinary when viewed through the altered and filtered lens of drawings, models, television, or dream states. Going back to Beetlejuice, the house devolves into a mock house, devoid of the spirit of the real one, which had homey wallpaper and sturdy wooden stair rails.
It's okay, there's no damage. Look, see? It's okay. Good, sturdy country craftsmanship.
Through the renovation, it becomes a flimsy set of gables and punched openings. It becomes unhomely. As an aside, I think this draws from Jacques Tate's film My Uncle, where a modern house, also with a face, is found to be alienating and strange. Decades later in Beetlejuice, it is the postmodern that is difficult to deal with. This theme of collapsing reality and representation extends further. The model, the drawing of the door, meeting Beetlejuice on TV first, not seeing themselves in the mirror. These are all uncanny collapses between the actual real thing and how it's mediated, or how it's shown in drawing, model, or other mediums. The film Heredity plays on this too, where a dollhouse becomes a stand-in for the actual house. Here the actions lead to a lack of agency and control for the protagonists. Filmically, it goes through all kinds of gymnastics to make it look like the characters are inhabiting a dollhouse, like by filming them with normally impossible angles with walls and ceilings removed. Often in these films there is a portal or a threshold into other realms, or other realities that happen through or within these representations. In Beetlejuice, you might step onto Mars with the sandworms, or into the model, or into the afterlife bureaucracy of the netherworld. In Poltergeist, it was the TV which served as a portal. In Nightmare on Elm Street, the dream state brought you into another realm. Or in Stranger Things, it's the Upside Down, also accessible through portals or rips between one reality and another. There's a sense that there's an area of the house that is forbidden, unmapped, unexplored, or simply a place that you just shouldn't go. In Beetlejuice, it's the attic, or in the house on Haunted Hill, you could access to hollow walls or hidden passages. These are the spaces where we put private possessions and activities to store them away from view. Putting them on display plays upon our fears of being exposed against our will. If the basement is the location of the infection, we get the sense that the house is rotten from its core. Its very foundation is tainted. In Poltergeist, it's the ground itself that's the problem. The cabin in the woods basement is full of discarded memories and people. Split, 10 Cloverfield Lane, and Barbarian are all set in basements. And in Silence of the Lamb, being thrust underground with no way out is like being dead before you're actually dead. It seems no part of the house is safe. The shower, stairs, ceilings, beds, they can all become sites of unhomely in the hands of gifted filmmakers or storytellers. These tropes step off of the screen and into reality with haunted house attractions, which provide a filmic experience using real-life space. These are often styled on Victorian mansions and contain scripted sequence of rooms with hidden passages and shocking contrasts of light and dark, big and small, quiet and loud, lonely and crowded. Locally, there is one called Hellgate Haunted House in Lockport, which is amazing. They deploy all these techniques and more, which are animated with over 100 actors, engaging the visitors in all kinds of scares. They even have on staff someone trained in architecture to help design and conceive of the spatial aspects of the experience. Then there's a scale model built entirely from Lego to understand and mock up the various rooms and corridors. All of these are designed to disorient you and set your mind racing about what's around the corner. Another technique for achieving these effects is trompe-l'oeil, where painting is used to create illusionistic spaces or objects extending the scene of the space beyond where it could actually go. This includes the use of forced perspective, scaling down objects that are meant to be understood as further away to trick your mind into perceiving the space that isn't there, and again collapsing representation in reality. Interestingly, these are also the spatial tropes deployed by people like Sarah Winchester, who believed that her house was haunted, but instead of disorienting visitors with the intention of scaring them, it's meant to confuse the spirits and keep them away from the inhabitants. And now that I think about it, that's also the techniques of H.H. Holmes used in his murder house to lure tourists in Chicago into his hotel so he could lurk in the hallways, bring his victims into the basement to torture and kill them. So maybe there is some practicality to all these fears. It's not just all in our head. Real buildings that are the site of horror have the same elements as those from films and movies. So now that you're primed to see them, stay safe this Halloween, or any other day of the year. And don't go down any dark passageways or hallways with unknown areas of your house. This video was made possible by Brilliant. All this talk about horror movies got me questioning what I think I know. How do we know what we know? Well, in order to learn more about the subject, I headed over to brilliant.org, where I did the lesson called Knowledge and Uncertainty. I learned by following Alice, who had fallen into a daydream where she had to recount the details of a detective thriller, and we had to find the suspects together by asking yes or no questions. Brilliant is my go-to for engaging edutainment on STEM subjects. With Brilliant's hands-on approach, you learn by doing, and there's a community of like-minded learners there to help keep you engaged. The courses have storytelling, interactive challenges, and problems to solve, and they have all kinds of STEM subjects to choose from. Maybe you want to learn more about computer science or math. Brilliant has something for everyone. And I am not a puzzler at all, but the way that they wrap it in such an engaging package has me coming back on my computer or on my phone all throughout the day. You got a free moment? Pop back in and learn a little bit more. And you can too while getting 20% off of your annual premium subscription if you're one of the first 200 to go to brilliant.org/Stewart Hicks to sign up today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. Subscribe or become a member if you haven't already. Videos come out every other week on Thursdays. And while you're waiting for the next one, check out some of these other videos. See you over there.